imagine that in the next few years, the paper catalog will be obsolete, and that's when I'll retire.
You and the catalog will go out together?
Absolutely.
You want me to read the introduction?
Go for it, yeah.
This will sound awkward, so just ignore it.
Okay.
Welcome to another interview for the Kansas City Garment Industry Project. Today is January 27th, 2011. I'm John Dvorak, and I'm interviewing Margie Sackin, whose family operates Harry Epstein Company, a wholesale industrial hand tool distributor at 301 West 8th in the Garment District. The videographer is Mark Titus. Far and wide?
Our company?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we sell all over the world.
Well, that's what it looked like on the web.
Yeah.
So the point of sale down there is not really the big thing.
No more. It used to be. But, you know, things change.
I shot some video in that hardware store about 7 or 8 years ago. I think Sybil had me go down there
Oh, she loves that place.
and film the shelves and the hardwood, the old floors, and she wanted
In the tin ceiling.
in the tin ceiling. It's next to the Lucas building or
Right.
something like that. Yeah, okay.
That's the old Brand Puritz building.
Right. Yeah.
The Lucas Place,
Yes.
that's the old Brand Puritz building?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Huh.
They cut out the floors and made the huge atrium, but it was just solid factory floors.
We interviewed somebody who had done a little bit of work as a gopher boy at Brandon Puritz in the 60s, and he was kind of funny. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I might as well put out the tape. Don't worry about these machines. We're just gonna, you and me are just gonna have a talk, and
I understand.
and I'm sure some pretty good things will come out of it. Why don't you start off by telling us who was Harry Epstein?
Harry Epstein was my father, and he started the hardware business in 1930 across the street, and there was a little old building between 8th and 9th on Central on the east side of the street. And it was a small building, and he outgrew it and moved over to where we are now, on the other side of the street, on the corner of 8th and Central.
What type of store was it in the 30s?
It was always a hardware store, and mainly American-made tools, and that's all they still carry, mainly American-made tools, which is why they can do business everywhere now, because American tools are difficult to find.
Has the store changed a great deal through the years in terms of what it sells?
Yes, quite a bit. Physically, the store is the same. I mean, you walk in there and you're walking into a 30s area, but the merchandise they sell is a little different, and they are now, of course, on the internet and sell a goodly percentage of their merchandise over the internet. So it's not the bustling, busy place inside that it used to be.
Did it once cater to retail walk-in customers?
If you lived in the area and needed something, you could go in and get it. A lot of the garment people did go in when they had a machine that needed repairing, or they just needed things. They were always welcome. But they mainly sold to hardware stores out in the country, small hardware stores in the country, which is, of course, now gone.
And it is no longer a retail business where a customer can walk
Well,
in.
they do. They take care of anybody that walks in, but very few people really know about it, so consequently, there aren't too many retail customers.
Did you work in it?
I still work. I don't work down there, but I put out the catalog. They still have a paper catalog, because there are people who still like to have a catalog, so rather than go onto the internet. So I still do that.
What types of things have you done for the store down through the years?
Well, actually, I never worked there except during the war, if my father went out of town, he bought a lot of government surplus in those days, and he would have to go inspect them. And when he did, I would open up and I would close and stay there for a while during the day. But other than that, I never worked there.
Now, when did Mr. Epstein die?
In, let's see, 92. He died right after his 100th birthday.
Really?
Yeah. And he was down there on his 100th birthday. He was a very active man.
He still kept in charge of things.
Well, he liked to see what was going on, sure.
Who took over the store when he was no longer?
My husband, Gene Sackin. He ran it for many years.
I see.
And then, and along with, now my two sons run it, and my grandson.
So it's been a family business since
Always.
1930.
Always, yes.
Now, who runs it today? Your sons?
My two sons.
What are their names?
Steve and Ken Sackin.
I see.
And my grandson is Jory, and he's the one who got them into the internet age. So he takes care of all the internet.
I see. Well, now, when your father began the store, the garment industry down there was really going great guns.
Oh, absolutely.
Was that one of the reasons he located there?
No, he just wanted to be in the city, and he wanted to be near the highway and convenient to Kansas and Missouri, because at that time, the main part of the business was industry, who came in to get what they needed. And so it was a convenient location.
In those early years, did he do a lot of business with the garment manufacturers?
Some, not, they were not really related, except that they always needed tools to fix something that was broken. But other than that, there was not a whole lot of relationship. They were all friendly. They all met for lunch. And there was a nice restaurant across the street from us called Tallman's. I don't know if any of the men, if they told you about that place.
Tallman Grill.
Yeah.
That's where the Phoenix is today.
That's correct. That's correct. They either went there, or previously they went up to Coates' house. There was always, Weiss always had a good restaurant up there.
What type of things did the garment people buy at your store?
Probably scissors for one thing, would be, or knives, or screwdriver that they had to fix something. I don't really know. I was never there when they come in. I mean, actually, the garment industry was a minute part of their business.
I see. So they would just have bought general types of hardware
That's
tools, nothing special.
They came in and bought things, and it was a convenience for them. It was not a part of our business.
Were there any other hardware stores in that immediate area at that time?
No, that was why they came in there. The only other hardware store was uptown, I think over on Walnut or Grand or something, somewhere around there, I've forgotten. Bunting Hardware. It was downtown, but it was on the other side.
Okay. Well, tell me about the garment workers. What are some of the stories you've
The only
heard
thing
about
I know about the garment workers was in the afternoon, they were all women, and they would be walking down 8th Street to Main to catch either the streetcar or the bus, whatever conveyance they were using. And other than that, we had no contact with the workers.
Did they spend much time in your store?
No. no. They were mostly women, and they were not interested in hardware.
They didn't use the store as any kind of a place to hang out or anything?
Oh, no, no. It was not that kind of a place. I mean, you can barely walk through the aisles. There's so much stuff there.
Were the garment workers a pretty collegial lot? Were they hard-bitten competitors, or how?
Oh, no.
What did you hear about them?
They all knew one another. They were mostly Jewish men, the owners, and they all knew one another. They were friendly. They lunched together, and whether they saw one another socially or not, I don't know, but they seemed to get along because they were in different types of, some of them made suits, some of them made coats, some of them made dresses, so the competition was not too stiff, I don't believe.
Did your father hang out with them a little bit and have lunch with them and that sort of thing?
Well, I was going to tell you about this one company. Was on between 9th and 10th on Broadway, and it was called the Gottlieb Company, and they manufactured hats, and which I don't know, but I would imagine it was about the only one around in that area that did ladies' hats, and they were friendly, and every afternoon they played bridge after lunch in the back room at this store for a couple hours, and then went back to work.
At the Epstein store?
No, at this Gottlieb hat store.
At the Gottlieb store.
On Broadway.
I see.
And they'd play almost every day. And then when ladies' hats went out of style, which was, I assume, in the 60s, then these men rented a room in the building across from us on 8th Street. I think the name of it was the Glover Building, I'm not sure. And they rented a room, and they'd still have lunch and then go play cards for a couple hours and go back to work. So there were a bunch of them that were friendly.
You kind of describe a sort of a more civilized working style, if that's the right phrase, than what exists today. Was it that way down there? That not a real fast-paced kind of life, just a...
Well, I don't know what their lifestyle was. I have no idea.
I'm talking about the whole garment district.
Well, they seem to get along, and as far as I know, I wouldn't have no way of knowing how they really felt.
Did your father ever tell you much about the various garment companies?
Not really, no. I mean, he was as ignorant about it as I am. I mean, outside of, when you go to play cards, you sit down and you play cards, and you don't discuss all that. They play bridge, and but it was not something. They were not people he saw in the evenings.
What were your first memories of the store?
Well, my first memories were of the old store across the street, and it was, as I say, very small. And the one thing I remember was that they had a rope elevator, one that you had to pull up yourself, which was kind of interesting. So this was a step up to move across the street and have a real electric elevator.
Now, what would have been the address of that store then? Do you recall?
I don't know. It'd be 80 something Central.
And today the store is at 301 West 8th.
Correct.
That's what you call the new store.
That's right.
So you really go back, your memories go back almost to the earliest days of the store then.
Yes, yes. Because my father was passionately interested in it. And he just loved it. He really did. And he loved all that he did with it. buying Army surplus and all that interesting tools and deals that he made. He really enjoyed it.
How did the store do down through the years in the 30s and the 40s?
It's
and the
always
50s?
done well. There's never been a problem.
Even during World War II?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It actually grew quite a bit during that time. That was a very good time.
Oh, really? Well, why was that?
Well, because he bought a lot of Army surplus and things, factories and all were booming and people needed tools.
And the store continued to do well in the 50s and 60s?
Yeah,
and
they've never had much of a problem. It's always done fairly well.
that whole area around there really died off. I don't know what point that began, I suppose in the 50s or 60s.
I would say in the 60s. When they tore down the building across the catty corner across the street, the manufacturers exchange building, the big tall building, that pretty much brought the area down, and it stood vacant for a very long time before they bulldozed it down. But in fact, we were the last tenant in there because we used to store things in the basement there. We rented space there. And when all the tenants had finally moved out, we had the only key. I say we, it's not me, but they had the only key. And they went in and out getting merchandise and whatnot. And then when they tore it down, or before they tore it down, my boys, who were, I guess 14, 16, went through there and seeing if they could find anything before they tore it down, anything was left in there. And they went into one place and there was a printing company in there. And they were gone, of course, but they left a lot of signs that they made decals. And they're all in my basement. I let them decorate the basement with all those decals, and of course they're still there. Some of them are pretty ratty, but they're
Still there today?
oh yeah, they're downstairs. And then the other thing we took out of there was they had a very beautiful lobby, and as you walked in the front door, there was a radiator with a beautiful wrought iron grill across it, and I had them take that out, and it's on my patio. It's my coffee table out there. And then if you look against the wall of the house down there, when they tore the building down, there's a couple pieces of terracotta there from the building, way out toward the end of the patio there, against the wall.
Well, how did
You're looking in the wrong direction.
Okay. But this grill that I'm seeing up here now, that's the grill you're talking about?
Yes. There's probably still has some snow on
It does have snow on it.
Well, how did you and your father feel as the garment industry died away down there?
Well, we didn't like having it empty. It was not very conducive for people to come to a place that was pretty empty. But it really didn't affect us too much, as far business-wise.
It didn't
No.
hurt the business
No,
particularly?
not at all. Not at all.
But it must have been sad to see all those
Oh,
companies
of course.
drop off.
Of course. And when the Brand Purett's building next door became empty, that was really hard to see. But they remodeled it and made a beautiful building out of it, the Lucas Place. And for a while it was full and it was very nice. And then now I think it's vacant again. I don't think there's anyone in it, which is sad.
Did the garment industry have to die, do you think?
That I have no idea about, except that everything now is made in China, and obviously they couldn't compete.
Yeah.
And I don't know if also the men who owned the businesses were older, and whether their sons and daughters didn't want to continue with it, that I don't know.
Do you go down there at all?
No, I don't.
I just wondered if you occasionally go through the district, what you think, seeing all those empty buildings.
Well, but most of them are not empty now. They're all lofts. A good percentage of them.
Some of them are empty.
Yeah, oh, sure. But there were a lot of companies that we knew that had going businesses that left there. There was a Frank Nelson Sales down on the corner of Broadway on about 7th and Broadway. And that was a big going company that's no longer there. And a company called S&R Sales, which was on Broadway, and it's gone. And Kansas City Carnival, all those stores have all gone. So it's too bad, but these things happen.
Brandon Pierce was a pretty big
Oh, absolutely.
going company.
Absolutely. I don't know the reasons for why they all disappeared, but they did.
Do you think younger people, like your grandkids, have any knowledge as to what really went on down there? Any appreciation for
No,
that
they
industry?
really don't. That was all before their time.
Should we be doing more to preserve that history, do you think?
Well, I think you're trying. You're doing a good job of trying to, but you can't live in the past. You have to move forward. And eventually, maybe they'll find uses for those buildings. Now Folgers is going out, so that's another huge building that's, and I don't see that there's any way that they can make condominiums. I mean, how many condominiums do they need?
They'd have to clean all that coffee out of there first.
Well, I'll tell you, that was one of the nicest things about the area was the smell of the coffee.
We're all going to miss that.
Oh, yes. It was wonderful.
Well, did you ever go to the Talman Grill?
Oh, sure.
Well, tell me about it. I always heard how the garment industry people hung out there.
They did.
Had lunch and
It
stuff.
depended on what time of the day you went there, who you would see, because most people keep pretty regular schedules. And if you went at 12 o'clock, you saw a certain number of people. If you went at 12:30, you saw a different bunch, and so on. But you walked in, it was not a pretty place by a long shot, but it had you walked into a long counter, and then around the corner there was another room that had booths, and still not very pretty, but it was clean, and he served very good food. Plain food, and he would fix you, if he knew you, he would fix you anything you wanted. He was a very nice man.
Was it the kind of restaurant where most of the people knew everybody else in
Pretty
the
much.
place?
And most of the delivery men would be in there too, and there were a lot of takeout. That was the beginnings of the takeouts kind of place. Well, the secretaries would come and take lunch back if their bosses couldn't get out, whatever.
Did it have a wait staff, or did you have to go to the counter to order?
No, they had several waitresses, and the waitresses knew you, and if you were a coffee drinker when you walked in, they set a cup of coffee down in front of you. You didn't have to even order. They pretty much knew what you'd want.
Could you find pretty much anybody in there, a low-level worker and a top executive of
Oh, yes.
the company?
Yes, yes. It was not an expensive restaurant. Most anyone could afford what they had.
Were there any other restaurants down there that people like to hang out at, or was that kind of the main one?
Well, as I said, the one in the Coates house,
Is Florence here?
Weiss had that.
You had the wrong house.
Mr. Weiss, Harry Weiss was his name.
Sorry.
He had restaurants
Oh,
in different places in different times, in many places.
What kind of a restaurant was that? Did you ever eat there?
Yes, it was a nice restaurant, and a class above Tallman's, and nicely appointed, and he served very good food. I guess you would consider it a Jewish restaurant, Jewish type food. There's also, of course, there was a Savoy, but that was upper class. It was not.
So you guys didn't go to the Savoy very much?
Occasionally. They had a big bar. I think it's still there. And we used to sit at the bar, and there were a couple waiters who would wait on you at the bar.
Would the garment industry people go to all of these restaurants?
The owners would, the workers would not. They would not go to the Savoy, and they would not go to Weiss's.
How about Brenton's? Brenton's? What was it?
Brenton's?
Brenton's, yeah.
Well, they were down on.
It was a little further away.
They were
wasn't it?
down on Baltimore, right across from the Mulebach Hotel down there, about 11th.
Oh, okay. That was a little
That was
further south.
A little too far away for most people.
It was a great old restaurant.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, Weiss took it over. He ran that restaurant for a while after Mr. Breton died. So he had a restaurant there, and he had a restaurant at the Coates house, and he also had one years later out at Twin Oaks. In the apartment building there was a restaurant.
That was his place?
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
He had many different restaurants.
Well, that's about all the questions I had for you. Anything else you'd like to tell us about the
Well, let's see
store,
if
about
I-
the garment industry?
Well, let's see what I wrote down. There was a building between our store and Brand Purett's at one time. It was called Sinclair Valentine, and it was I really don't know what they did. I had something to do with oil, I believe, or cars. And when Brand Purett's left, and the man who bought the place is now called Lucas Place, he tore that down. And we wanted to buy that building because it was right next door and we needed the room, but they wouldn't sell it to us because they wanted to make it a parking lot. So, parking lots were more important than old buildings sometimes.
Well, isn't that what they did to the building across the Merchants Exchange? They tore that down and turned it into a parking lot too,
Oh,
didn't
sure.
they? Right.
Sure. Well, that and the whole next area up where our old store was is all parking.
Right.
And the only other thing that was there, well, speaking of parking lots, across from the Savoy is that big covered parking lot. And that had stores there that were owned by some Jewish men. On the corner was a store called Opticons, and he sold novelties and, I don't know, all kinds of odds and ends. And in that building on the second floor was Nat Nass Shirt Company. I don't know if you've...
I've not heard that name.
Well, he made bowling shirts. And when he died, I think King Louis bought it, and they, I think, moved out of there and into a bigger place. But Nat was the originator of making the fancy embroidered bowling shirts.
And what was the name again?
Nat Nast.
Nat Nast.
N-A-S-T. His widow is still alive if you're interested in talking to her. Alice remarried, but her two girls, actually, she had two daughters, and they have a company in New York called Nat Nast, and they make a prototype of a bowling shirts, and I don't know what other kind of shirts, but I know that they do shirts.
Boy, that whole area down there was really a going concern, wasn't it?
It really
back
was.
then?
I think he was pretty innovative in making those shirts. I don't know, because I don't know anything about the bowling industry except that everybody wore them.
Now you say you know her.
Yes.
Would you think she might be willing to talk to us?
Oh, I'm sure she would.
She still has pretty good recollection
Oh, yes.
of
Oh, yeah.
the old times.
Sure. She could tell you about the company.
Well, we appreciate you giving us your little slice of things.
Do you have any more notes that you'd like to share with us?
I don't think there were. I was just wrote down some of the things that were around at the time. In the building, when we left that old small store, a company went in there called Kesco, and it was actually the first kind of, it was small, but it was the first kind of discount house. They sold jewelry and small appliances and that kind of thing. And they were there until they finally went out of business. And
I've never heard that name. How is that spelled?
Kesco, and it's an amalgamation of several of the owners. The only one I really knew was the man named Kittinger who owned it. He just died recently. But I know that the other two letters stood for somebody else, and I don't know who they were.
Anything else on your list?
No, I told you about, did I tell you about S&R sales? They were down on Broadway.
You mentioned them.
Yeah. They were owned by two brothers named Kamen. And other than that, that's really about all I know about the area.
Are you putting out the catalog on computer?
Yes. It's on the computer, but it's also paperback also.
I love the part of the website where it showed the filing system. I suspect there's more than that. But,
My grandson has a very good sense of humor.
yes, he does. I thought the website was very nice, and that was a humorous part of it. I forgot to read the introduction.
Why don't you do that now?
Can you put it on?
Sure.
We have an introduction to each one of these interviews, and for some, you got to talking about your father, and I finally said, well, who was Harry Epstein? And I forgot to read the introduction.
Let me do a fade out, and then we'll come back up and we'll do that,
Okay.
so I can paste it at the front.
Your last name is pronounced Sackin.
They haven't got a computer, and they carry the catalog with them.
So you think you still get some pretty good use?
You
We are.
specialize in...
Mostly all American-made tools, which is getting more difficult all the time.
Well, I noticed that emphasis on the website. Why is there that emphasis?
Because there are very few places where you can buy American-made tools anymore.
And buyers want them?
They absolutely do. We have people all over the world who want American-made tools.
So it's not that you're kind of waving the American flag, it's just a marketing thing.
Absolutely.
We still make the best tools.
They are well done. And if you want something that'll last, I mean, the homeowner who goes into Home Depot doesn't care. But when you're a professional, you want something that'll work and will last.
Has the internet been a real good thing for the company?
Wildly successful.
So your grandson is popular?
Oh my goodness. Well, I I don't know where the business would be today without him, because it has changed so dramatically.
Was there opposition from other relatives to going on the internet?
No, well, it's just my two sons, and
They were for it.
they were for it. They just couldn't do it themselves.
Well, I was real cranky about the internet when it first started. I didn't think it'd amount to anything. You know, I'm a curmudgeon, so if I'd been in charge of your store at that time, I probably would have told your grandson, no, we're not going to do that. But it takes young people like that to keep us moving.
Yeah. If you want to stick with the times, you have to move ahead.
Change with the times.
I've got a release that we're asking all of our the people that we talk to sign,
Oh,
which
sure.
gives Sybil the right to use this. Would you mind
No.
signing it?
Okay, I'm going to fade out again and we'll be done.
How he spelled that?
Probably Weiss.
Do you know what his first name would have been?
Harry.
You have a picture on your wall of a young lady with blonde hair signed by Nast.
Yeah, that is Alice Nast, and she was the wife of Nat Nast. She's a very good artist. She does a lot of portraitures.
And now, is that a picture of her self-portrait, or is
No, that's my daughter.
that's a picture of your daughter
Yeah.
that she painted for
You're
you?
right.
That Nat. And Nast, what is the Nat? How does that spell?
N-A-T.
Oh, that was a